Hello, this is Albert from Rainwater Systems, and I am going to be talking about rainwater harvesting. And I have other videos, but this is going to be kind of the introduction to what I hope to be a series of instructional videos and open source sharing of knowledge about rainwater harvesting, because I believe that this is the key to growth for our society going forward. So, this is an old photograph gallery of mine that I haven't updated in probably 10 years, but it just, you know, through my connections and having a background in rain gutters, I was able to get a lot of referrals from the manufacturer Bushman. At one point, I was their kind of go-to installer. And it just opened up the floodgates to a lot of jobs where I got a lot of practical experience and a lot of repetition. And those who might know me might know that my background was kind of the ornamental gutter thing. So I was trying to kind of figure out, a way to grow my business, and also, you know, dealing with clients who aesthetics were key. So, part of what I did is I really put a lot of thought into how to make things look good and how to make things palatable for, people that were serious about conservation, but also, wanted their property to look good. So this this first video, I'm going to walk through my class outline of the practical rainwater harvesting course that I would teach at Cuyamaca College. I used to do these things because I thought it was, it was good for business, and it was a way to kind of get myself out there as, the expert, because people do want to buy from an expert. But it was a part of my strategy was to market through education. And as time went on, I found that I preferred education over installation because it's tough running a business in California. But um, I've been a licensed contractor since 1998. I was a lead designer and trainer at No Thirsty Child, which is a nonprofit work that did a bunch of rainwater harvesting projects in Rwanda and a bunch of other countries. I got to go to Rwanda 5 times on mission work doing rainwater harvesting over there. I've been Southern California's most prolific installer of these systems, and I was an instructor at Cuyamaca College, and I would get asked to represent the Bushman manufacturer at their trade shows, and in exchange I would get the leads for the installs. And so I got to do hundreds and hundreds of residential installations of larger scale rainwater harvesting projects. And this led to jobs all over California, some in Nevada, Utah, Hawaii, and Rwanda. And see how I can figure out how to flip the page here. Let's think here. So, as an overview, there it is. California is not a desert. It's a Mediterranean type climate. You hear people say it's a desert a lot. And we receive on average of 12 inches of rain per year. This year, obviously, we're 3 or 4 times that. They'll measure the rain in 2022-23 in feet, not inches. Rainwater harvesting is not only a sound concept in this area if it's done right, it is the only practical solution for water needs for a growing population. So this has been what I've been feeling for 20 years, is looking at the whole situation and how our society is built. The fact is it's not sustainable. They're building houses and they're not accounting for the water. There's not a endless source of water. Politicians are not, building reservoirs, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a limited amount of water that can be imported or extracted from the ground, and both of those methods are environmentally destructive. It is not good for the environment to be sucking water out of the ground and irrigating it. It causes all kinds of issues and can pull out nitrates, salt water, and, you know, it's and then there's the fact that historically speaking, there's no society that has depended on irrigation that has lasted longer than 1,000 years. That was the downfall of most of the Southwest. The Mesoamerican populations kind of were done on with drought. But one of the things that I was always trying to educate people on is like that what they go to and they see in the big box stores of these rain barrels is definitely not practical. So what they typically see is a 50-gallon rain barrel available from the big box stores. It has dimensions 26 by 36, say. It's poorly designed overflow. It's often made from plastic containing chemical toxins. They often have leaky and fragile fittings and are, in my opinion, a bucket list type of product that is meant to make you feel good, but it is designed not to collect enough to be useful, work good enough to be valuable, or last long enough to create a good experience. These are a modern culture throwaway item destined for landfills. And that is a statement of fact that in the course of my career, I've had to throw away many rain barrels. We'll go to do somebody's new gutter system, and they had old gutters, and they had these little rain barrels, and they're like, "Yeah, get rid of these, please, or give them to your next client." And I can't do that. I mean, unfortunately, I'll dispose of them, but it's not something that we're real fond of. I mean, it's not green. What practical rainwater harvesting is, it's a system large enough to cast at least 1 inch of rain from a roof area, ideally large enough to collect 2 inches of rain. And what that means is if you have a house that's 1,200 square feet and you get 1 inch of rain, you're talking about 800 gallons. So a minimal system for a small house in Southern California is 800 gallons. That should be considered a minimum. And if you're 2 inches and 1,600 gallons is better. 1,200 gallon tank is actually less cost per gallon than 3 200-gallon tanks in the economy of scale with the math. It must have an overflow that is directed at least 10 feet away from the base of the tank so the tank base doesn't erode. A heavy tank can tip, become dangerous, set next to a hillside. It's a bad thing. It must have some sort of clean out basket or a sediment trap. It will have both a electric pump and a gravity discharge, meaning just like a hose, you can plug a hose spigot into it and it'll take the water out with gravity, or you've got a pump where you can drain the tank in 20 minutes or so. Rain tanks must be fully automated. There can't be anything that customers have to open or close when it's raining, because it's raining in the middle of the night. And to be fully automated, it should tie into the irrigation system. And I've evolved on this a little bit. I'll discuss at a later time, but it has a run dry backup so the system can operate on the rainwater tank year round. So basically you have a tank that never runs dry because it's got a line from the house with a float valve in it. And then you don't use the rainwater everywhere. It's used judiciously on edible foods and the drought tolerant plants. And you basically will set up, the smartest way to do it is to set up new irrigation that's fed off the tanks, that's strategically distributed to just the edibles and the drought stuff. And so I list a small medium-sized system as an 865-gallon tank. And that back then was a Bushman product. They're now made by Norwesco under the Bushman brand name, but same thing. And this is kind of showing my situation. This is my design of a first flush device, the 6-inch diameter pipe kind of on the right. And there's a lot going on there, but the skinny pipe that's a 3/4 line is the incoming line from the house that has a float valve inside the tank so that it keeps about 10% of the water in the tank all the time so the irrigation can run. The top 90% of the tank is for rain. The pipe to the right, the larger diameter pipe, that's the 6-inch first flush device. So the water comes out of the gutters along the pipe to the right, and it will rise with gravity up and drain into the top of the sediment tank where there is a plastic ball that will rise with the water and lock the sediment into the sediment trap. And then the cleaner water diverts into the tank. At the bottom of that 6-inch first flush device, there's a little brass valve that you can set to be open so it'll trickle out and drain between rains. That's a design I came up with. Everything you can buy is mounts on the building itself. They're ugly. They discharge the water right next to the foundation or on the wall itself. So this is what works when you're actually out doing jobs. You got to have a sediment trap right next to the tank. You want to have the tank set away from the house in general, because people don't want some big giant ugly tank right next to their bedroom window. So there's a way to do it away from the house. It's called a wet system. And let's see here. And the math is an average home in San Diego yields more rainwater than is practical to store. If your average roof is 1,000 square feet, the yield is 600 gallons per inch of rain. So last night in El Cajon, we got 1.5 inches of rain. Average small house produced well over 1,000 gallons of rainfall. And then this is kind of what I would do is I would get people to look at the city they're in. You can pull up this Country Studies US and pull up any city, and you get the average rainfall. And in here, if you look at the average precipitation, January 2.3, 2 inches in February, 2.5 inches in March. It really bottoms out in July, August, September, October, and then we start to get in the rain season again. So using this historical graph, if your tanks are full in April and you've got, say, 4 months without much rain, and bear in mind, this does not account for the condensation that comes off a roof every day. I will also do another video about that. Then you kind of get a working number. So say you've got 3,000 gallons and you've got, say, 90 days between rains, then you've got 3,000 divided by 90 gives you X amount of gallons per day. And it's a number. So then the idea is you start to plan your yard actually based upon the rainfall data for your area. So this is kind of trying to show, again, the precipitation, the peaks and valleys is predictable, it's reliable. This is 150-year-old data. So even though we are dealing with climate anomalies and lots of rain, I would go off verifiable historical records and just use math to convince people that this made sense. And so the flow chart is average home, 1,400 square feet, San Diego. Say you collect 2/3 of that, 1,000 square feet, you get 2 inches of rain. That's 1,200 gallons. 1,200 gallons divided by 90 days gives you 13.3 gallons per day for 90 days with a 1,200 gallon rain tank. And if you're strategically watering edibles, like your fruit trees or, say, herbs and whatever you're growing, 13 gallons a day is a respectable number, and you're going to have that during summertime. And then, trying to get people to embrace these trends that are now sort of being mandated by cities, which is infiltration basins, where, we all see water running down the curb. It's like you can cut a slot in the sidewalk and dig a little basin, and it helps to recharge the groundwater. This is something that we can all do. And then, one thing I was always trying to get people to think about was the condensation. So, we're extracting a lot of condensation from the air that's mostly then, re-evaporating, but that's water that could be put to use, directed to the tanks for use. And as I evolve in my perception of how these things should be used, I'm starting to think that powering toilets is like a key, like using this rainwater, because we're using perfectly good drinkable water to flush our toilets. Anyway, this is Albert from Rainwater Systems. I encourage you to share this video, because the mission of this is not to sell you, but to help educate and open source this knowledge so that we collectively together can create a sustainable path forward. Thanks for listening.